Yes, Aaron? Yeah.
We have great operations in the Czech Republic, Austria, Hungary, Serbia, Bulgaria.
Okay, good. So, good morning, everybody. Welcome. I would like to welcome you all here, those that are here in the room with us, but also people who are following us online. My name is Adam. I work for Natural Mineral Waters Europe. And before we move to our honorable speakers and panelists, I would like to give just a couple of words to explain why we are here. So this is an official Green Week partner event. Why we thought it's very important to organize this event is, well, it's very much derived from the nature of our product. Natural Mineral Waters Europe represents producers of mineral water and spring water in Europe, and it's always important to remind what does this product stand for. So a lot of people still think that it's water that is put into bottle, but that's only part of the story, and I would say less important part of the story. What makes natural mineral water and spring water what it is the fact that it's water that is abstracted from the underground aquifer and provided to the consumer in untreated form. It also has always a stable composition, and so this implies that in case the aquifer is compromised in terms of quality or quantity, it's basically a game over for that source. And therefore, especially in the context of climate change, where we see more and more problems with water scarcity, or on contrary, too much water, when there is more and more often human-induced pollution, and also the connection of quantity and quality clearly affects also the quality of the water. We feel more and more that it's necessary to stand up and take place as active player in the watersheds. So now when the Green Week was very much oriented to water, we wanted to take advantage or make a good use of organizing this meeting and explore the two sides of the coin, which are protection of water cycle, and the protection of nature and biodiversity, because water is life. So in a way, the more we work on this, the more we realize these things are extremely interconnected. And so as Natural Waters, we have recently, or last year, we launched a project with IUCN. This project has as its objective to develop a framework to measure and monitor the state of biodiversity in the catchment areas. Why is this important? The companies that we represent, they already take measures, and often they want to take proactive measures, but it is very important, first of all, to mainstream this kind of activities, but also to create a consistent methodology of how we measure and how we monitor over time. And so when we launched this project, and as we progressed, we realized that indeed our other work stream dealing with water stewardship and making sure that the water cycle in watershed areas is healthy, that there are huge connections in between the two. So this is what we are going to explore today. There will be the presentation of Mariana Borges, who is the project leader of this indicator and framework development. And then we will have a panel debate on these interconnections. And what I would really like to hear is some kind of a perspective, how this can develop further as we go. Thank you very much once again for being here with us, online or in person. And I wish you all a good event.
Adam, thank you. Good morning, everybody online and in the room. My name is Simon Levitt. I am your facilitator this morning. How we will run this morning, we have about an hour and a half together. So how we will run this morning is we will first, as Adam says, have a presentation from Mariana Borges, who has been leading on this project, as Adam was saying. We have 5 panelists with us who will introduce themselves afterwards, from the European Commission, from a couple of civil society organizations, from 2 member companies from the mineral water sector. We'll have a panel discussion, and I think the most important thing is that we get good questions and discussion. So already as you're listening online to Maria Anna, if you can, I think the best thing to do is write on the chat. So write any observations or questions on the chat already. And my colleague Angus in particular will be looking at those and will then be replaying those comments and questions into the room for us. So with that, Maria Anna, can you hear us? Do we have you?
Okay. If you could unmute, I think, presenter now.
Good morning. Can everyone hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Maria Anna, before you start presenting, just a question as you represent those online. Can you hear us well from the room?
I can hear you loud and clear. Yeah, perfect.
Great. So can I pass the floor to you? Maybe just introduce yourself briefly and then give us an overview of the project.
Sure. Thank you, Simon. I will do that. I will just start by sharing my screen. Hopefully, you will be able to see what I project. Just 1 second. So we tried this yesterday, and somehow after years and years of presenting online, it still seems to take a while. Sorry about that. While it looks like it's not really doing it. Oh, here it is. Yeah. Can you see my screen, my slides?
Yes.
And are they in presentation mode?
No, not yet.
Oh, then I think, yeah. Sorry, 2 seconds. Anyway, I will try to multitask and talk at the same time. I've been introduced, but I'm Mariana Borges. I work at the International Union for Conservation of Nature. And as Adam mentioned, I've been leading on this project, this engagement between Natural Mineral Waters Europe and IUCN. So I think that's pretty much kind of the introduction from my side. I've been in IUCN for a long time, and I work in the water and wetlands team. In the past, I was working in the business and biodiversity program. So that's kind of my background is around bringing together kind of nature conservation, working towards water resources management, and then also working to engage businesses in improving their practices regarding biodiversity and water management. Yes, I'm really sorry, but it seems like I only managed to get myself into this mode of presentation, and it sounds like you can't see it in presentation mode.
But it's quite large. I think
it's
we're
quite
going
large,
to be okay.
So you'll be okay. So let me know if you can't, because I'm going to be switching between the slides, but you may not. If it doesn't happen, then I'll just get myself off the presentation mode on my side so that you can see what's going on. Did anything change on your side, or is still this first slide?
Still the first slide.
Okay, okay. All right. So, and this is better. You see a second slide about IUCN? Okay. Great. Anyway, so just a little bit about IUCN, just because I'm aware that maybe not everyone knows IUCN. We are a nature conservation organization. We're an international organization, and our vision is about a just world that values and conserves nature. We are a membership organization, and we have more than 1,400 members worldwide. They are composed of states, non-governmental organizations, and indigenous peoples organizations. So in that sense, we're quite a unique organization that brings together different types of constituencies. Beyond the kind of the organizational members, we also manage a series of expert commissions. And so we have individual experts that are members of IUCN, and we have more than 16,000 that are organized in different themes such as species conservation, protected areas, climate change, communications for conservation, economics, and ecosystems. So in a nutshell, that's kind of the power of what IUCN brings. And what we do is, I mean, I work for the Secretariat, so we're here to serve our membership, but also our member decides what our program is every 4 years. And we work both on the ground in terms of implementing projects on the ground, and then we also work to influence policies at different levels, both at global level, but also, for example, within Europe through our European office. Just to give you a sense of kind of the magnitude, we are pretty much in all countries, not all countries, but in many countries. We have more than 1,000 staff around the world. And we run approximately, well, over 400 projects with kind of a large portfolio worldwide. And so that's kind of just a quick IUCN introduction. And then I'll pass on to the subject matter. So, I was asked to talk about how the work that we're doing with NMWE really fits into this theme around how do we link water and biodiversity. And so, I mean, just as a reminder, but I think maybe everyone in the room is aware of this, that, freshwater biodiversity and ecosystems are in crisis. And they are particularly threatened because we are, losing wetlands 3 times faster than we are forests. In the past 50 years, we've lost a third of the world's wetlands, and we've seen a decline of about 83% in freshwater biodiversity. And in terms of Europe, the freshwater biodiversity and ecosystems in Europe have also undergone really important declines because of pollution, because of habitat change, and also due to loss in connectivity. So, I mean, I don't want to start with a bleak picture, but it is a somewhat bleak picture when it comes to freshwater biodiversity and ecosystems. And yet, I think that where it's important to kind of take stock is that although things are not looking great, these ecosystems are actually key for both water and food security, for tackling climate and nature crisis, and really for driving sustainable development. And actually, I mean, I think within Europe, there's beyond the Water Framework Directive, which really establishes this link between healthy freshwater ecosystems and the protection of water, both in terms of quality and quantity. There are other emerging kind of legislations and frameworks that are really looking to shift those curbs from the kind of downward shift to the upward shift. So that's really reassuring. And the recent nature restoration law, I think, is only kind of a good encouragement to show that there's really a concerted effort to improve that. And I think where I want to make the link is really that, biodiversity is not only an indicator for freshwater health, and therefore something that is intimately related to how water does, but it also contributes to improving the state of freshwater and other ecosystems. I mean, I think that you can see clearly in the graphs, in the images that are on the side of the slide, that really looks at kind of how water is everywhere, and how like the different processes that water interacts with that kind of support human well-being, that support the ecosystems on land, and then biodiversity is very much part and parcel of that. And so our collaboration, I think Adam summarized it well, but it was really like the starting point of our engagement was really to look at how does NMWE engage and really improve or like develop a concerted strategy for biodiversity. But for us as IUCN, this was always within this kind of roadmap of water stewardship. And what do we mean by that is that, as I said, these things come together. Actually, biodiversity will be, protection of biodiversity would actually serve water protection. And beyond that, we believe that, a player like Natural Mineral Waters Europe, given their vested interest in making sure that the resource is protected, is a really good player to work with to go from kind of site-based management of biodiversity and ecosystems to really stepping outside the fence and working to protect biodiversity in large area, in catchments or in landscapes. The entry point for NMWE was the EU Code of Conduct on Responsible Food and Business Marketing Practices, but it's important to note that also, as we started working on this with the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive and this double materiality, this is also an important piece that kind of brings the relevance directly to the work that we are doing together. And as I said, the sector is highly dependent on healthy ecosystems and specifically kind of healthy water resources. And for us, because water, as we saw in the previous diagram, is very much everywhere and in a way is impacted by all that is done on land, but also that the natural mineral water sector is actually impacted by other sectors and what they do on land, then for us it's very much about looking at how do we work together to protect biodiversity and freshwater ecosystems. So that was kind of what we set out to do. And so we've been working together for about a year and a half now, and what we've done is very much kind of outlined in this slide. It provides an overview of the process that we've undergone. We started by getting a sense of the sector, to understand, what the different members of Natural Mineral Waters are doing on biodiversity already, but also how it links, or how they are linking biodiversity to water management, or yes or no. And then we've had like some work between bringing IUCN experts and industry experts together to discuss, what are the needs on the industry side and the expectations, but also what is the expertise and robustness that would be required to really look at how you measure biodiversity, progress within areas where NMWE members are active. And we've worked through a process to basically develop some biodiversity related indicators, and then really within that build a framework for action for the different types of NMWE members. And so we're about in that point where we'll be delivering some recommendations to Natural Mineral Waters of how to really integrate biodiversity and create a strategy, as I said, within a roadmap to water stewardship. And so just to give a sense of, what that work, I talked about the process. Now I'll talk a little bit about, what we did. So as I said, the survey was really looking to understand a bit more about what NMWE members are doing. And for those who are not completely familiar with the sector, it is kind of or the membership of NMWE, it is quite unique in the sense that they have not only national associations of mineral water, but also independent companies that can be quite small, but all the way to multinational companies. So that was the diversity we were dealing with. And so although I think they have over 500 members, but we received, I think, what is a good sample of responses of about 50 responses from the different categories of members. And so what the picture that was seen within that survey was very much that, there are, when it comes to the companies, the multinational companies, they all have established sustainability commitments, and most of those are actually public commitments. And then we also checked to see what types of commitments have been made. And if you can see on the right-hand side of the graph, that basically a lot of that and the emphasis, or the larger part of the commitments are around water, some on kind of more like broad climate change, and then a bit less around biodiversity protection and restoration of ecosystems. And yeah, we also wanted to understand, what kind of reporting is being done. So again, you can see that, within within the sector, there's quite a lot of already independent reporting and certification, but actually when it comes to biodiversity, which is the first bar, that's a little bit less visible within the survey that we carried out. Besides that kind of understanding of, what are the commitments that companies are making, we also wanted to understand what was the diversity or the types of actions that companies were already doing on the ground related to biodiversity conservation. And so we got kind of within the slide, you kind of just get a sense of some of the things that are already ongoing, which, demonstrates that that although maybe it's not showing up at the commitment level or in terms of reporting, there's quite a diversity of actions that both companies and national associations are already working on the ground, like, for example, restoration of freshwater ecosystems, including, pond restoration, afforestation and forest management, removing invasive species, reintroduction of different species. And then you can see that kind of intimately related to that is some of the water stewardship actions, which relate to kind of aquifer protection, spring water reduction in the consumption side of water, reducing pollution through improving sewage systems and improving connectivity. And then again, like as kind of the feedback loop goes, looking to engage with agriculture to reduce also pollution on the side of the agriculture, and then engaging different civil society on the ground to help carry out this work. So then, yeah, so what happens then is that we, after having these two workshops, we've come up with this broad biodiversity strategy and indicator framework which is kind of organized around 4 key steps. And as I said, because NMWE membership is quite diverse, the steps are actually segmented between, what companies could and should do and what associations could and should do. And so this is a kind of iterative step. It's a process around how you understand, how you impact or how you depend on biodiversity, all the way to how you act upon it. And so the first step is very much about understanding the linkages between basin health and biodiversity impacts and dependencies. And that is quite tangible for companies, and we provide kind of guidance around how you can do that, what are the key information needs, where you can get those, and how you engage stakeholders to help you along this journey. And for associations, it's very much about a mapping exercise that helps the membership really understand, how national water resources are doing, who are the stakeholders that are engaging on these subjects, and also how biodiversity is doing in different regions in a country. Under step 2, we very much recommend looking at starting by setting a goal or a vision for the biodiversity work with specific targets. And again, this can be done by the companies and then kind of migrated up to the associations, or the associations could very much help by creating national goals that then the companies can kind of feed into. And once that vision and goal is set up with the targets, then it's about selecting indicators that will help understand whether you're on track to these. And so as part of the work that we've done, and I'll talk about it a little bit later, we've created like a long list of indicators for biodiversity that will help then the companies and the associations really navigate, what are the types of indicators that can help create benefits between water and biodiversity. And then finally, the main point being that once the goal and vision and targets are set up and the indicators are selected, it's very much about, what are the actions that I need to take to make sure that those curves are going in the right direction. And then it's an iterative process. So it's not expected that you kind of learn from the process of implementation, you establish partnerships, and that continues. I won't go into this one, but then just on a little bit more on the indicators was that we've, with the experts, agreed that like it would be important to really have three sets of categories of indicators. One that really looks at land and how land is doing. So looking at kind of the capacity of land relative to its potential to sustain the delivery of ecosystem services. So because as I said earlier, what happens on land very much affects what happens in the water and the freshwater systems. Then we have another category that is around freshwater health, which looks at, making sure that the freshwater ecosystems are healthy, and that we measure specific indicator species that help tell that story. And finally, the piece that I mentioned before, which is how do you go from, individual site level engagement to looking at stewardship? So how do we work, what are more kind of process or engagement level indicators that show that that different actors are coming to the table to protect the catchment versus the individual parts. And so essentially right now what we're doing is developing a decision tree to help navigate how to select the most relevant indicators for companies and for associations. So that's in a nutshell what we've been doing, and happy to take questions or any comments and to hear the discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Maria, Anna, thank you very much. I'm sure we will have questions for you. You're able to stay with us for the session, is that right?
Yes, I can stay. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'm sure we'll have questions for you. Again, for those online, if you have questions for Maria, Anna, or any of our panelists, or observations or comments you want to make, then please put those in the chat, and we will be tracking the chat very carefully. I'd like to bring in our panelists and just to introduce them. So going from me round the group, we have Luca Perez, who is Deputy Head of Unit in DG Environment for Sustainable Freshwater Management in the European Commission. I got that right. Then we have, who do we have? We have Achim from Nestlé Waters, who is in focus of sustainability and stakeholder relations. So welcome, Achim. And then next, I'm just checking next to Achim, another member of the Mineral Waters Association, Klára, Hálová, who is head of the water category and education program at the company Mattoni 1873. So welcome, Klára. And then two civil society organizations with us this morning. Paul Brotherton, I'll get you guys right around. Paul Brotherton from Wetlands International Europe, a manager for freshwater. And then at the other end, Sergiy Moroz, I get that right? Yeah. Who is at EEB, the European Environmental Bureau, and is a policy manager for water and biodiversity. So welcome to you all. It's great to have a mix of stakeholders, so to speak, some companies, some civil society organizations, European Commission. Perhaps if I can start asking questions to Achim and Klára from the industry side, particularly in terms of your role working with Maria, Anna and the team. Why, from a sort of the industry point of view, why this project? Why did you decide to? There's many things you can do. Why prioritize this project? And any learnings so far from your side? I don't know who of you wants to go first. Ladies first.
Okay. Actually, it was said already because for us as a sector, it is really like the question of existence. Let's say, because we are enormously dependent on water and on the cleanliness of water. So that's why it was quite clear choice. And why NMWE? Because NMWE has roughly 500 members. Most of them are SMEs, and for SMEs, especially, we both are from quite big companies, but the SMEs they don't have so many resources and probably even people to dig very much into the depth. And that's why we really wanted to help them to decide on like which way they could choose, because we are protecting water since the very beginning. For us, as I said, like it is essential, but rather, let's say, passively, there was no, or there was in some cases, but there was no really active approach, which is changing very, very rapidly, let's say. And I think that all the sector is currently, all the sector is aware that this is the need. This is excellent opportunity for us as well, and it will help us for the future as well. And as Mariana already said, like we started with biodiversity, and we are coming to the water resilience as well, because all these things are very closely interconnected. And I'm also saying that it is also very closely interconnected with the climate change. All these things are in the scope of all the companies through the CSRD. This is where I see that the legislation is a huge enabler for us. That is really pushing the things forward. And so this is how it all started. And we are coming, let's say, to the new start, because I don't want to say end, which will push, which will move us a little bit further, especially for the small and medium enterprises, because for the big one, we already have it, we are obliged through the CSRD and so on.
Klára, thank you. Maybe Achim, if you could pick up on working for the last year and a half with IUCN on the project. Any sort of learning so far? Anything unexpected? Aha moments?
Well, first of all, nothing to add to what Klára said. We tend to agree on the two topics. On this project, no, it's delivering as expected. That's what we're wishing for, and we're looking forward to have the final recommendations and the final set of indicators that will really help the sector to step up their work in a more focused and targeted way. This is somehow also related to the work that we have been doing as a non-SME. So as Klára said, it's at the heart of our sector to look into the quality and quantity of our sources. So also on our side, traditionally, we have been engaged in the protection of the quality of our sources, working with partners, especially farmers on the surface, to mitigate potential risk for the quality of our sources, and of course aiming at keeping the water balance, maintaining the water balance, also dealing with shared water challenges in the watersheds where we're entitled to operate across Europe. Mariana mentioned as a side of the one very important buzzword, which is water stewardship. So as category, we're committed to the thinking of water stewardship. There's some certification standard behind it, the Alliance for Water Stewardship, and we're currently working on having all our sites across Europe certified across the Alliance for Water Stewardship standard, which is not necessarily something that I would actually recommend to SMEs, because it's a lot of work and it's taking a lot of resources, but the thinking helps to shape the right action in the watersheds. And it's about understanding a local context, the shared water, nature-related challenges that you find in your watershed, and then systematically shape joint action with other stakeholders in the catchment area. And this concept of water stewardship helped us quite a lot. And now to build the bridge to the water and biodiversity, going beyond this Alliance for Water Stewardship certification, we have committed to contribute to the regeneration or strengthening of the local water cycles beyond our own operations. So this is going, as water stewardship is going far beyond factory gates, and beyond the immediate catchment area and the water balance of the sources we're using, we're looking into the water cycle of the wider watershed, which means we try to shape activities in the watershed together with partners that contribute positively to the water cycle by setting up projects that have a quantifiable impact on the local water cycle, like the improvement of water quality, like keeping more water in the catchment area as some means of climate risk mitigation. And this work on regenerating local water cycle led us to a pretty broad of projects across Europe. So currently around 50 projects at different stages of maturity in the implementation. And this project portfolio includes as well technical solutions like helping to fix leakages or quality issues in the public infrastructure, but it's also about nature-based solutions. And there we're clearly at the heart of the work with IUCN. We're looking into these projects from the angle of quantifiable water benefits. There are methodologies available, but all nature-based solutions will have positive impacts on biodiversity. And to measure and track these projects, and also to be able to account for or report on the impact that you're having, such a framework as IUCN is currently developing will be highly valuable. And that's our key buy-in into the project. So.
Thank you, Achim. I'm going to come to all of you in a moment. Just maybe one last question to those of you with sort of industry hats on and Maria Anna, and who've been working on the project. Around the topic of SMEs, which you've mentioned a few times. So if I understand the sector, it's an interesting sector. So first of all, it's a very European sector, sort of European companies, hurrah. Secondly, when you sort of about 30% of the sector is larger companies, such as the two companies that you're here representing, and say 70% or so is sort of more the SME side. And as you say, and as we know, and it's a Brussels question in policy beyond water, of how do we all engage SMEs who are busy doing what they do and they don't have time to come to Brussels and discuss policy necessarily. So as this project moves forward, and maybe also for Maria Anna as well, as this project moves forward and the framework is created, has there yet been any thinking about how this could be disseminated to SMEs, how there could be an impact so that this framework, this project could move from being a framework to actually helping SMEs on the ground do things, for want of a better word? Maybe Maria Anna, and then come to Achim and Klára.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, so I think that it's a really important question, and I mean, it's part of our thinking is really to look at how the different membership categories can really embrace this work. I think there's when it comes to the SMEs, there's a really important role for the national associations, because that's kind of the entry point for the SMEs, and for them to take on board the strategy and really customize it at national level, do some of the groundwork in terms of the analysis of the catchments and understanding a bit more what are some of the national challenges that need to be overcome, and really creating, guidance that is tailored to the SMEs. So to me, that role is the role of the national associations is key to really empower SMEs to take on board this type of work. And also as I said, IUCN is a membership organization. I see an important role for IUCN members to engage and help bring that to life, working with the national associations, but also engaging with the SMEs in specific catchments that are earmarked as kind of areas of risk in terms of water and biodiversity.
So that's interesting. So you see, and that sounds great. You can see a role for IUCN members who are civil society organizations at the national level, perhaps working with the national associations and SMEs. So it's taking the collaborative framework you've made at international level and then bringing that sort of multi-stakeholder approach in countries.
Exactly.
I would say that it is a quite nature development of what we are already doing. A good thing that we have quite good communication network. Let's say we are meeting regularly within the association, and the members know already that something is happening, because they were contacted to provide us with the data that IUCN then proceeded with, and so on. So at least, you know, like all the members are already part of the process. Let's say they know that something is happening and that we are preparing something for them. That's the first thing. The second thing that is that most of the associations are already locally working with the local NGOs and probably with the people from the network of IUCN on the other hand. So it's just natural continuation of the process that has been started.
Thank you. And I would clearly see the value from the framework that IUCN is developing also as a framing for local engagement with local IUCN members, as they would perfectly qualify for partnerships for water-related projects in this context, but also with local authorities, policymakers. Sometimes it's highly beneficial to have a clearly defined science-based framework for this kind of engagement. So you're all on the same plate, you know what you're talking about, you're speaking the same language. And I believe this framework can really serve as an enabler. So, and this will also help to cascade the activities down to national level.
Thanks, Achim. If I can come to Paul and Sergiy, 2 questions, and you can choose who answers what. So I think, so one question is, you as organizations see industry sectors trying to grapple with topics like this. Have you seen other sectors where there is an SME component do things successfully, where you can sort of go beyond the big companies who are probably already on the journey and see how others have been able to really activate SMEs to take on some of this work when they don't always have the man hours to do that? I think that's one question. And then another question is, I think a lot of people in this room and online are more experts in water. If all of us were trying to explain to a non-expert, right, perhaps a colleague who come to this, but a colleague in the European Commission who's not a water expert, or colleagues in all of you in your organizations who are not experts, in concrete terms, right, there'll be this framework, there will hopefully then be the activity of the big companies and the SMEs. If we were trying to explain to non-experts the metrics, what would we be looking for as success? So we look 5-10 years and we say this type of work has been successful because now we can see the improvement in wetlands, or the improvement. Biodiversity is quite it's everything, but it's quite conceptual. Could you give any examples to non-experts of the kind of concrete successes we might be looking at? I don't know who wants to take either of those questions.
Sure. I'll go first, and then Paul. Again, thank you so much for the presentation, as well for the IUCN and the possibility to talk about water and some of the things that have already been said. It was also really interesting to listen to Achim. Had we had this panel 5 years ago, I would have been saying the things that you've already said, how important was switching it, and how it is about shared risks, and how we really need to have the collaborative action in the river basin. So hearing large companies or SMEs already talking about that is already quite a move that just happened within 5 years. What is really still needed, we really need to scale it up in a way. So we have good examples, and I applaud the companies here and the work that you've been doing with the IUCN in really trying to identify those actions, etc. But as survey has shown, some of the important actions are still not happening. The river restoration or nature restoration commitments in the survey are still coming relatively low. So the focus still seems to be on getting the site, and it's logical, it's within your sphere of influence. So I understand that you would want to look at getting your house in order first, but the science is very clear. The urgency is crucial. Those risks are shared. So if you don't work with farmers in the catchments and river basins that you operate in, we are all heading towards collapse. So the success will look in where we really not just look in, investing into tertiary or fourth level treatment in the site level, but if we really go outside in the catchment and we start restoring nature, we start reducing the pollution, and you are really working, and you've been doing that already, but we really need that happening on a much larger scale, where you are working with farmers in trying to encourage them to apply best practices and try to avoid that pollution. Because if that pollution still ends up in the river or catchment where you operate, you are also facing those risks, whether they're reputational or whether they are regulatory, etc. So what is kind of the big focus that we really need to do now, and the science is telling us we don't have a huge amount of time, so the sense of urgency should be there in really scaling this up and really achieving those actions at the river basin level, because that's the only way we can deal with water. And the success will look like at wetlands that are being flooded and full of wildlife. The success will look at water not being polluted and really then available for everybody to enjoy, etc. So, and we have Water Framework Directive, we have the legal framework in Europe that is already translates some of those difficult conceptual, ecological, and ecosystem functioning in indicators. We have an indicator of good health, of good status. It's complicated, it's composite, etc. We need to make sure how we communicate the progress made, etc. But overall, the framework is already there. So we, I also was very happy to hear that when you started looking into this and starting engaging with public authorities, etc., there are already frameworks. There is already diagnostics of the problem. So, I'm not saying it's easy, but some things are already there, and we can definitely be making use of it, and this will definitely help with compliance. And it's true, WFD is there. We now have also an opportunity with the nature restoration law that's just been adopted, and member states will need to start planning some of the restoration measures, including for rivers, wetlands, etc. So there is also a big role of companies present here and elsewhere to engage also with public administrations as part of your water stewardship journey. The water stewardship also foresees this collective action at the basin level, plus engagement in public policy. You also will need to engage in public policy on the national level, on the EU level, but for the benefit of everybody, not just for fighting for water for the sector, but for the benefit of everybody, because we're in this together, absolutely. And the quick thing on the SMEs, maybe just very shortly, it's true there are different companies, there are sort of SMEs, but what you said I thought was really, really interesting. Alliance for Water Stewardship, if you want to be rewarded for demonstrating the actions, you take true, it requires external verification, so it will require some resources. But the thinking of it doesn't necessarily, quite a lot just requires internal commitment to try to do it. So, you don't need then to go through external verification. You don't have the certification requirements. You can just take the thinking around water stewardship and apply it and look outside of the company gates. Because water is local, water is complex, but there are really good examples. We can crack it. With the will, we can definitely crack the significant water challenges that we face. So SMEs can try to do that. And associations, national associations, European associations, can definitely help with best practice sharings, lesson learned, etc., showcasing some of the better examples.
Thanks, Sergey. Paul?
Yeah, picking up on that as an organization with a focus on wetlands, and as Anna mentioned, we've lost so much of our wet landscapes. This is our water storage, basically, throughout the world, but particularly in Europe, through drainage for agriculture, forestry, urban development, infrastructure, all of these things. And as a direct consequence of that, we're seeing now the droughts, the floods, the fires, and the loss of biodiversity. I'm struck that many of your companies have been working, though, for probably over 100 years at protecting quality and quantity at the source. And my organization has really been researching the multi-benefits, and we really see from that research and catchments that, for instance, were affected by the floods in 2021 in the Eifel region of Belgium and Germany, that restoring what we call the sponge, natural sponge function of landscapes can reduce flood peaks by 30% during floods, increase base flows 20% during dry periods. Of course, reduce a lot of the pollutants, the nitrogen and phosphorus at a local and catchment scale level. And of course, a lot of these habitats, these sources of water, the upper catchments, the headwaters, these are some of our most threatened habitats in Europe. These are our fens and bogs and mires. So of course the co-benefit of restoring these areas and the natural water retention is also the biodiversity benefits for the many plants and animals that are inhabiting those. And of course another benefit is the carbon storage. So in Europe, while you've been managing your landscapes to retain water, by and large, we've been mismanaging for the past century to drain them as quickly as possible. And I think as our experience working with our members and partners on the ground and in EU research projects such as Horizon Sponge Boost and Horizon Re-Wet, it's a lot easier if you own the land and can work within your own fence. And I think the multi-billion euro question, and maybe you're grappling with this and can offer lessons to us, and this is the connection maybe to Luca and EU policy, is finding the right incentives, tools, and financing to make that collaboration in the, as Maria Anna was saying, the wider catchment and landscape with those other stakeholders such as farmers and foresters and communities. I think if we're saying these areas are strategic natural infrastructure, they should be treated as critical infrastructure and have the same sort of financing and prioritization. And jointly, we are proposing some strengthening of a new EU legislation to allow for additional financing, for instance, of a sponge financing facility, or to require stricter protection of water reserves and water stressed areas. So I think these steps can go a long way towards creating water resilient landscapes with all these stakeholders we're talking about. And I think that takes the kind of public-private partnership funding from the industry, and also financing from the EU and its investment arms to make that happen, and that we're all kind of stakeholders in this. And I know you prioritize these collaborative multi-stakeholder processes, so I think that's what we need to invest more in, to create these visions for more climate and water resilient landscapes and the climate we're facing now.
I'm going to come to policy, and I'm going to come to Luca in a moment. Achim, I think he's wanted to say something else.
Just a very quick one, responding to Paul. Appreciate that we obviously share the same passion for wetlands. In the context that you flagged, we have one project related to peatland restoration. Apologies, Luca, it's not inside the European Union anymore. It's UK.
It's not your fault.
We have plenty of peatlands to restore within the union as well.
In the local sector, setting for Axen mineral water parent factory, we're actually facing frequent floodings of the community downstream due to the degradation of the peatland in the industrial history of the region. So the work that has been recently started on the ground with earth being moved around, removing the drainage, recreating ponds, with the ultimate ambition to keep more water in the peatland and to let it re-stabilize again. And the ultimate goal is to prevent the floodings in the adjacent communities. And we'll see for the impacts, but this is the setting where if we're lucky to have a nice wetland area in the wider watershed, that's clearly one of the activities to prioritize. Also due to the benefits that you mentioned, carbon storage, biodiversity. It's not only about the water resilience benefits. That's quite this one.
So we are in Brussels, and let's turn to policy. So a question to Luca here. If you look at what's already in place, I think that the institutions can be happy to a certain extent that you have the WFD, you have and obviously it's now for the countries to implement. We have the nature restoration law. Some of the actions of industry were sort of nudged along in the code of conduct. So already this has been somewhat of an active area of policy. I guess a couple of questions. This sector has a special focus on this type of environmental protection. It's the raw material of the industry. There's a heritage of 100 years or hundreds of years of working with it. But if you look at other economic actors, they don't have that incentive, whether that's farmers or other industries, etc. How much do you think the existing policy framework, once the nature restoration law is working, how much do you think is already in place, and how much do you think there's a gap where somehow future policy needs to be added?
Well, thank you, Simon. Let me start by saying that I'm very pleased to be here, and I'd like to thank you for organizing this event. I think it's really refreshing to hear about what the sector is doing. And as you said, it's clear that this is a sector that more than others understands the challenges of water resilience given the dependency. And the issue is the one that you pointed out in your question. So how do we get to a more systemic approach at the EU level to the issue of water resilience? So including with a specific focus on the link between water and biodiversity. This is where I do personally see the need for a paradigm shift, if you will. So going beyond the WFD in the sense of working with water management authorities, looking beyond nature, but bringing a wider realization across society and economy about how much we are dependent on healthy ecosystems, on both water quality and water quantity at the same time. I think from the point of view, we are on a journey. It's clear that, as you are probably seeing from the call by EU institutions, from a number of member states, from a number of stakeholders, there is a clear understanding and appetite for more action, for the resilience. I don't think we all necessarily have the same understanding about what that means. But maybe a few points on that from my perspective and from the environment perspective. And mentioning very clearly, of course, I cannot prejudge what the next commission is going to do, but clearly the work that we've been doing, the messages that we've been trying to pass through the Green Week, through the See Water Differently or Waterwise EU campaign that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is that we need to look at water resilience as a holistic issue, a horizontal issue that requires a comprehensive approach. Restoring and protecting the water cycle is the basis of such a new approach. And this is where this part of this work is extremely relevant. There we have the WFT, we have the nature directives, the nature restoration law, but I will also mention the soil monitoring and resilience law. We have the forest law that is also in the making. So we are very well equipped. We need to make sure that increasingly also other sectors understand the importance of this work. And this goes together with another key pillar, which is the issue of making sure that our economy as a whole is much more, let's say, wise, if I can use the wording or the headline of our water campaign. How do we make sure that we have a much much more efficient way of using water across key sectors? How do we make sure that we tackle all the pollution drivers in the key sectors? Agriculture has been mentioned. This, as you know, is a huge question at EU level. We are in the process with the Sustainable Dialogue on Agriculture and the initial thinking about the future of the CAP. It's clearly that agriculture is both part of the problem, but also part of the solution. So I'm very much pleased to hear about how much engagement the sector is having also with the farmers. And maybe the final point I would like to mention is indeed that, of course, at EU level, there is a lot that we can do when it comes to, putting in place maybe a more comprehensive strategy and a common understanding amongst member states at EU level about the direction of the travel. We have our legislation that needs to be much better implemented. And this is particularly the case for the Water Framework Directive, as you know, with our looming 2027 deadline that we all know we're going to miss. So we need to find a way to accelerate action. But then it's clear that the EU can facilitate and provide funding. We are very much ready to discuss and engage also on how to build this partnership between private and the public sector. But it's clear that action needs to happen at multiple levels. So the role of the member states, the centrality of the river basin management planning at the scale of the watersheds or catchments is extremely important. And there my call and my plea to all the stakeholders and the sectors is much more actively than we have seen somehow in some of the river basin or in some member states, precisely to be the champion of this watershed stewardship approach.
Thank you, Luca. Maybe I'm going to come to the audience in a moment, online and in the room, if you have questions. But one question to, and Sergiy, I think you wanted something. I'm going to ask the question and then you can either answer it or say what you wanted to say. Maybe they're the same. In terms of policy for you guys, as civil society organizations, when you look forward, so similar question to Luca, when you look forward 5-10 years, these things take a long time in Brussels, and there's the existing policy framework, etc. What would you like to see from a policy framework point of view, in addition to what's already in place?
No, I think it's a very good question, and also it's really something that is happening right now after the elections, where the majorities are being formed and where the next priorities of the EU for the 5 year are being discussed, just across the road tonight. And, one problem that we really see that environment, water has been seen as a political issue, as a division between political. Some of the conservative and far-right politicians that have gained more seats in the European Parliament are really, taking the badge of honor by saying, we want to dismantle a lot of those environmental standards and environmental protections. We want to, get away with some of the Green Deal agenda. So, unfortunately, environment, nature, water protection are seen, as a partisan issue, as the issue on which different political parties position themselves. And I think that's really something that we'll need to work very hard to overcome, all of us together. Environment, it is about our water protection, it is about our own survival. So there is no way, it's the basis really. So it cannot be, an issue of political games in a way. But that's sort of the framework that we will be operating in the next 5 years. And there will be attacks on dismantling some of those standards. We've already seen that happening as the result of the farmers' protests, where some of the rules under the Common Agricultural Policy were just removed in a sweep. There are discussions happening in the Council where there are additional exemptions being introduced to the Water Framework Directive already now, etc. So, the climate is not really, there are attacks on some of those standards. So I very much agree with Luca that focus really needs to be on implementation, on securing the funding. We need political will for that. That was kind of a very clear finding from the fitness check of the Water Framework Directive. The directive is fit for purpose. What it is lacking is lack of political will. And as the result of that, it's lack of funding, lack of coherence with the other EU policies like agriculture. And so if there is a political will, then all those other pieces will fall into place. And that's something that a bit of a deficit, but I hope we will overcome that. But and I think based on the discussions that we've had today, we really see water and biodiversity agendas are merging, also in the EU policy frameworks. The nature restoration law is about solving biodiversity crisis in all ecosystems, including aquatic ones. And Maria has shown us how badly freshwater and aquatic biodiversity is doing. So it's a welcome thing. And what we're missing still is the climate and nature agendas together. And the attempt is there, again, the nature restoration law is trying to do that by prioritizing ecosystems that are important for biodiversity and climate. Paul mentioned how incredibly important, what heroes some of the freshwater ecosystems are in terms of storing carbon and storing water and helping us with both mitigation and adaptation to climate crisis. I think we need to continue that journey a little bit more in the EU policy frameworks, especially recognizing, the European climate assessment, climate risk assessment that's just been published by European Environmental Agency this year, and where water resilience is falling a little bit into the response, but as Luca mentioned, different people seem to be understanding different things by it. So we haven't actually seen what the new plan to make EU more water resilient is. But we would argue that as part of that, we can have a new regulation to help with climate resilience, including water as a big component. Needs to come additional to the Water Framework Directive and other pieces of legislation, but there are some elements, whether it is about securing environmental flows, making sure that there are water reserves established, or as Paul mentioned, making sure that there is funding available as a sponge facility to help with some of those restoration projects, because it's when it comes, for example, to purchasing land to re-wet, it's not something that you can do with the existing funding, maybe with private money, but with public money, that's something that's more difficult. So, having a fund that allows for some dark green measures would be beneficial. So just sort of, I know we're still sort of discussing all this, but one thing that we are advocating, on implementation and enforcement, but still filling some of the legislative and driving EU, making EU more climate and water resilience is still one of those gaps.
Thanks, Sergiy.
Very briefly, just picking up on the climate risk assessment, I'm struck by how many times I've seen officials from the Commission or a European Environment Agency saying some of the key findings from that is we are not adapting fast enough. The change in the climate is far outpacing what we're doing, and we're at risk of these cascading effects. And I think before the election, even there's a broad call for more action on water across industry and a blue deal and farmers, and of course civil society and those involved in the water industry, recognizing that the sort of adaptation strategy is a first step by the Commission, that it recognizes the value of water retention in the landscape, the importance of healthy soils, but clearly putting all this together where we are now in this ongoing cycle of drought, flood, fire, a lot more needs to be done to increase our climate and water resilience.
Thank you. So this is, if anyone online would like to ask a question, anyone in the room, we have about 10-15 minutes left, so the window is slowly closing. Any questions from in the room? Yes, there's a question over here.
Yes, maybe I can start. They hear me well. So, Hermes Panagiotopulos from the Rama Ventures is the largest PET producer in the world, virgin and recycled. A question to Sergiy, my friend, because I see, and you are correctly to say that we have a fight now with the Green Deal for the next 5 years. Climate change is something that is worldwide. So if we close all industry in Europe, we will not do a favor to the climate because it's transboundary. Water in particular is something that, even though it's transboundary from one country in the EU to another, but as Europe, we can do a lot of things in order to have, and actually it's not only the national spring water producers that they are doing a very good job in protecting their area, because it's, as Adam said, it's game over if there is a pollution in catchment. But all industries in Europe are using water. So it's a vital, and with the climate change, we are all agree that we have an issue and water needs to be protected. So the question is, because from the freshwater, and because I'm out now some years from this, but freshwater consumption in the world is like mine, or the mineral water in spring is mainly agriculture that was mainly mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, globally 70%. I don't know the numbers now, but how do you see, because you mentioned a little bit, so my question is, because this is a microcosm that we're talking about, natural mineral spring waters, the bigger picture is what happens with the biggest portion of the water usage, or the freshwater usage, and that's, and how you would suggest to industries in order to move towards more, because everyone is doing its actions, but the point is from EEB perspective. That's my question.
No, thank you, and I think this is a really, really good question, because I know, and we acknowledge the efforts that the sector has been making. And I know we're only talking about water, but we haven't touched some of the other pollution aspects. Can I say plastics? And so these are a little bit outside of the discussion today. We really want to acknowledge your action on water stewardship. So what I want the sector to do is to do more of that. What you've been doing, scaling it up, etc. But the big thing that we've been talking about, and you really alluded it, it's your convening power, working with farmers, working with the other sectors, because it's a real understanding, as Achim said, those risks are shared. We are all running out of water, or if water is polluted, we cannot use it, no matter what industry or sector. We are all screwed So it's really also up to you to work with the others to make them aware, to bring them on board, to help them, like you've been doing with the farmers. We need to do more of that, because at the moment farmers are in denial. When their associations are really not caring about the long-term future of the farmers, because if they really cared about long-term future of the farmers, they would be the first supportive of the nature restoration law. They would be the first supportive of changing the cap for the delivery of public goods, etc. At the moment, the strategy of the farmers associations is just let's protect what we have, let's protect the cap money, and also let's secure the water that we've had. You were saying 70% goes to agriculture. Globally, yes, in Europe it's a bit less than that, because a lot of European industry is also using a lot of water, but farmers are still an incredibly important water user also in the seasonal periods when water is scarce and goes to a lot of farming. Farming is, I'm not saying it's the only water user or the only problem, but it's definitely a very, very substantial one as well. So, so this collaborative action, water stewardship action, working with the other sectors, engaging in the public policy and trying to make sure that we protect the resource, we really restore the nature, etc. I think that is sort of the way forward. So we need more Green Deal, not less, going forward. And I really hope the association will be vocal about that.
I think Klára and Achim both wanted to make a clarify.
So I just wanted to say, like, what I'm hearing here is perfectly in line in what we think as well. And I have to say that we're talking about the collaboration, like we cannot do that alone. And you were also talking like about looking behind the fences, and we know already, and that was also part of one our workshop, I don't know, half a year ago. Then we have been discussing that we need to really have a much wider view than it was up to now, and we started already. That's why we are collaborating with IUCN and with other experts as well. I could give you some examples already, but I would be here for long. So, but it is already happening. So I just wanted to express, the light of hope because it is already coming. Like also within the sector, like. And we, I don't want to say like that we are the only sector. I'm pretty sure that also other sectors are working that direction, probably slower, but because we are experts in water. But I just wanted to really express that it is already happening. We are talking with farmers, for example. We are talking with agroforestry industry. We are really like trying to get all the relevant people on board and to discuss how we can push that further. So it is probably slowly as you would expect, but we are on the good track.
Don't get me wrong, we see that. We see that and we acknowledge that. But on the other hand, we also see a huge amount of disinformation that's, for example, been happening around the nature restoration law. And it's been really generated by vested interests who are resisting that change. I mean, they really had conservative and far-right, I've never been involved in the environmental file, that was hitting all the headlines, which was fantastic, but for wrong reasons, it was hitting the headlines because there was so much misinformation and disinformation spread. So, I really acknowledge, I know that but also as we've just heard, you're an important sector, but we also have other sectors. So I would, and that's something I think we would need. And I know that sometimes you also kind of shy away, let's get our sort of sector together. I really think, it would be really nice to see sector being, because what you're doing is right. We want to do other sectors doing that as well. So it would be fantastic to see you being more vocal about what you achieved and what you want the others to do, because that's, we got the nature restoration law through only because there was such a big mobilization of youth, of citizens, of progressive business that came on board, of some of the progressive farmers, etc., of civil society organizations, and then one courageous green environmental minister from Austria before the council.
Achim and then Luca wanted to come in as well.
Reflecting a little bit about the different scopes of our engagement. Today we are clearly discussing mainly what we can shape together within the watersheds where we're operating. But clearly our biggest environmental footprints are in other scopes. So we know from a range of pilot biodiversity footprint assessments that we did, by the way, painful exercise with global biodiversity.
But don't stop doing things on water. I know you have other, but you continue with action on water. But be aware, obviously, of the other footprint issues.
Completely one take out is our biggest impact on nature comes from the carbon emissions related to packaging and also logistics. So clearly the work on packaging circularity, decarbonization of our scopes 2 and 3 is clearly a must to do. And this will not be deprioritized because we need to work on water. But as you know well, what the sector is doing on taking up more recycled content. A couple of years ago, I could not have imagined the sector pushing for deposit return systems that effectively address the issue of littering, but gets the material back in the loop with the related carbon benefits. So this work is absolutely key to continue. And we know that it's closely related to our impacts on nature. So we know where to mitigate our risk. I think that's well-defined direction and progress is being made. But on the positive side, we can clearly have a positive impact within our catchment areas, applying this local thinking, addressing local water cycles, working with the different stakeholders in our watersheds, which can be farmers, but as well other industries. So in one country, luckily not
if I make scaling up is the right word that Sergiy used, because you are doing very good things at catchment level. If this can proliferate everywhere, that's a challenge and the opportunity of the sector to shine as well.
With the economy strongly being driven by SMEs, similar approaches like we're doing for our sector with the work from ISN could also work easily, strategically copy and paste it to other sectors. There's a lot of guidance already available. So water and nature guidances for the mining industry, for agriculture, not looking at the huge challenges in food and beverage industry at scale. So we know quite well that at Nestlé, our smallest environmental footprint comes from the water business. We're pretty lean and light when it comes to carbon emissions, nature impact, simply because we do not have so many agricultural ingredients in our project. Actually, we do not have any, except for some lemonades. So this is where the impact can be shaped, and working with other sectors and spread learnings is an absolute imperative.
Thanks, Achim. We have just a few minutes left. I'm going to come to Luca. Then I have a question, last question from Maria Anna, and then I'll ask Adam to close us out.
Okay, two very quickly. So first of all, to mention the question and the debate we just had, point out to the issue of going beyond the water sector or the water industries. And there I wanted to mention that when it comes to both energy and industry, there is a lot happening already. So the whole work on energy efficiency is basically the other side of the coin of water efficiency. So there are a lot of gains to be had. And when it comes to the industrial emission directive for the largest installation, we're going to see much more attention on water reuse efficiency for industrial plants. But going back to the theme of our debate, the issue of agriculture, as we said, very crucial, a lot of potential partnership to build there. I think the biggest danger that I see moving forward is going for the easiest, in a way, solutions or what are perceived to be the easiest solution. So more infrastructure, more irrigation, let's build more reservoirs, etc. While some of this may be needed in some areas, what we need is a more comprehensive approach. And I think where you can help with all this work that you're doing in cooperation with the UCN and with your local partners is precisely on this engagement with the farmers to explain this multiple benefits that we can gain through nature-based solution, through natural water retention measures, for multiple economic sectors, for the farmer themselves, for the citizens, etc., etc. So the evidence and the experience on the ground really needs to be built up and scaled up.
Thanks, Luca. Maria Anna, perhaps if I can just come back to you. We've looked at the project so far. Can you just give us the headlines in terms of what are the next steps? When will the project finish? How will it finish? What will it lead? What will dissemination?
Sure. Yes, Simon. So just to say, yeah. So the next step really is getting these.
She's not.
Sorry.
No, I unmuted myself.
Yeah.
But can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks for the question. So yeah, the next step is very much to get these recommendations launched and to really start working with natural mineral waters around how do we, help customize this. So there's going to be an element that is around, what is the community of practice that needs to be in place within the Natural Mineral Waters Europe leadership? Who needs to be involved? How do you roll this guidance out? There will be the kind of capacity building and training aspect of it, working with national associations with members to really very much build kind of these champions to help roll it out. And I think that key, as we discussed, is really getting partnerships set up at national level to help bring this forward. So to me, those are some of the next steps, and yeah, I'm looking forward to that journey. I think hopefully we'll have some interesting and good engagement. We certainly do in Achim and Klára, who are champions already with a wider community. So we hopefully can bring more to the fold. And actually, we've been kind of growing that space. I think the other thing to say, and I think it's been echoed by everyone in this discussion, that it doesn't stop there. It's the beginning of a journey, and I think this sector is very much the stewards, and they can really help rally the troops, let's say, to really work with across other sectors, and specifically agriculture was mentioned as key. And I think the nature restoration law is really important to demonstrate that, Luca, as you said, that it shouldn't be about the easy kind of gray infrastructure solutions, but really building on how do you bring nature-based solutions into this. So those are some of my takeaways, and also kind of the next steps from our side.
Maria Anna, thank you very much. Thank you for a really interesting presentation. Thank you to all of our panelists. Really interesting discussion. And if I could just ask Adam to say a couple of words to close us out.
Yes, okay, good. So thank you very much, everybody, for being here today with us. I took a couple of notes, and of course, we will need some more time to digest everything that's been said here. One thing I took as a first note is something that you get from every meeting like this, and it is a lot has been already happening, but more needs to be done. You get this from every meeting. It sounds like a cliche, but it's true. That's why we are here. We are here to actually scale up, and I think that's another keyword. I really like the keyword of scaling up. That's actually the main reason why we are here, because we want to engage with policymakers, engage with civil society, because we are not coming here from the position of we know it all. We have some good practices that we want to scale up internally. We want to learn. We want to be with you and get kind of an honest assessment of what could be done better. We need to have the let's say cooperation or kind of understanding of the makers of how this action can be enabled. And I can say it's just like a little first, maybe not first, but definitely one of the first steps for us to get out there and be an active player. I would almost say another word that I heard here, to be a champion of this process. I always say we abstract very little. If you compare, we abstract really tiny amount. It's on the level of tens of thousands of an economy. But we should have, and I think we should have an ambition to play an outsized role, because we are close to the water, we have the knowledge, we have the absolute utmost needs. We cannot take our source and bring it to a different place. So definitely I want to keep up this ambition. I want to say we are organizing a little field trip to the Spadal area, where they are launching a really nice nature restoration project. And I would like to continue this debate there. There will be a couple of representatives also of the civil society that that are here today with us and some more. So we're definitely not ending this discussion here. Hopefully we'll also be able to engage a bit more with policymakers and explain some of the issues that we have or some opportunities that are there. And so with that, once again, I would like to say thank you very much for being with us. Please stay with us for a couple of more minutes for some refreshments. And yeah, let's continue this discussion in the months and years to come.
Don't forget, thanks to the facilitator.
Yes, exactly.